All right, so as we progress from the 40s into the 30s, our list gets very interesting. In slot number 40, we have Forlong the Fat, which will generate some discussion in a minute. We have Iron Hills Captains on either goats or chariots, depending on who you talk to, but
Good
certainly
on
on
both.
something. Certainly on something. We have Theoden, King of Rohan, at 38. We have Legolas, Prince of Mirkwood. This is from the Halls of Thranduil list at
Mm-hmm.
37. We have Quickbeam, the Ent, at 36. Glowin, the champion of Erebor, who cannot take a goat, at 35. We have Durnhelm from Rohan at 34. Faramir, captain of Gondor, probably on a horse and probably with a lance, at 33. We have the twin sons of Elrond, Eladan and Elrohir at 32, and narrowly edged out for slot number 31 is Thrain, again from the army of Thror. So I'm going
A
to
lot of
begin.
dwarves in these two bands here.
We
Lots
do
of
have a lot
dwarves.
of dwarves. Yes, lots of dwarves. More to come. More to
Yes,
come.
there's more coming. No surprise if you play this game.
I would like to begin by talking about Forlong the Fat,
Yes, you should get that out of the way.
because
Where
this guy is overall number
along the fat
40.
ranked, Tiberius?
I had him at 17.
Wow.
This guy, this guy is good. He is
He's
baller
good.
good. The most unfortunate thing about him is to get him this good, you have to buy not one, but two packs of that Heroes of the Fiefdoms pack or whatever it is,
Yep.
because you want him on a horse. So unless you're willing to do the magnetism thing, where you hack the model in half and you magnetize his lower halves to the upper half that you just pop on and off, you really need him mounted. This is a hero who does not strike. He's a fiefdoms hero. There's 4 fiefdoms named heroes. 2 of them can strike, 2 of them cannot, and this is one of the ones who doesn't. He is a base 2 attacks, but gets that 3rd attack on the horse with a war spear at strength 5. So when I did my evaluation of him against Shagrat, he only won 35% of the time. So 1 in 3 fights, he actually beats Shagrat. But when he wins, he does an astounding estimated 3 wounds to Shagrat every single time he wins, which means if you get like a 5 and Shagrat gets a 4 as his high dice, you are willing to boost that thing up to a 6, because you're going to force him to just burn through all of his might in like a single turn just to beat you. And when that happens, you're like, haha, I'll try to blunt your attack with my 3 wounds at defense 6 and fate point. And if I'm alive at the end of that round, we're both fight 5 now. You're out of might. I'm not out of might, and I will run you over. So he's really great. Needless to say, he also did really well against troops. And of course, he's got banner radiuses. He's on a horse. He's reasonably survivable, kind of mid-range score, and he's inexpensive. He's pretty inexpensive, under 100 points. So this was one of those other cases of strength 5 mounted heroes who were pretty cheap, doing really well in my evaluation, and I stand by the fact that he is far too low for where he's supposed to be. That's the hill, and I'm stuck on it.
Do you want to go first on this one, Rythbryt? You want me to handle this?
Look, I do want to put in a word. I am not ever going to slander a hero who is strength 5 with a war spear on a horse, because when you can wound guards of the Fountain Court on 4s, you're pretty good at killing stuff. So I want that out of the way. Shout out to my main man, the Mahood King. The Mahood King has strike. Forlong does not. I feel like that needs to be said. My only other rejoinder is you've got Forlong at number 17. Is that right, Tiberius?
Correct.
You have Gwaihir where?
I have Gwaihir at number 20.
So I rest my case. That's my case.
There you go. Okay.
Okay. With a slightly longer but not particularly long rejoinder, because, by the way, I love Forlong. Forlong was also on my
Arlong's
list,
good.
albeit,
Arlong's great.
yeah, I mean, he was number 49, so he didn't really clip too high into my list. But this goes back mostly to my methodology as regards how I looked at stuff. Two things that I looked heavily at was fight value in the fight. If you have an elven weapon, that's even better, and resilience. Forlong is a fantastic offensive character, but if he ever loses, there's a very good chance that your epic slaying character will be gone in very short order. He is not a particularly resilient character, and that makes sense because he dies at the Pelennor Fields. Okay, so so they are trying thematically to maintain this fact, and that's cool. I appreciate that in the design. The other issue is that there's a lot of ways to blunt Forlong's offensive capability. If you kill the horse, his damage potential goes down dramatically. He doesn't even get a cool Lasarnak axe like the rest of his boys do. He's got a war spear, which becomes a spear in close combat. The fact that he doesn't get strike, the fact that he's only at fight 5 kind of compounds with this, where when he's charging on a horse and you get to move first, he's a very good killer. But change any of those factors and you're in trouble. And I'm just curious, when looking at the stats for how much damage he can do, was it ever considered that Shagrat, since he's winning 2 out of 3 fights against Forlong, wins the first fight when Forlong's on the charge, takes priority, and charges Forlong in the second fight and wins that one? Or even loses that one? I feel like the math changes dramatically, assuming not the best scenario for Forlong the Fat.
So what you're asking for is what in so I do stats for a living. What you're asking for is what's called a Monte Carlo simulation, where you basically say, okay, we're going to run 2,000 rounds of combat, and we're going to keep a tally of how many times one guy wins and the other guy wins, and each time we're going to roll the dice, and we're going to keep track basically of how much of the time each guy dies, right? Is what you can derive from that and say, overall, Forlong takes this many wounds per round, right? Overall he deals this many wounds per round, given how often he wins, given how often he loses, given how often he dies, right? He takes all that. And you could certainly do it. My evaluation was optimistic. I gave the hero that we were evaluating the benefit of the doubt, so they were always on the charge, right? Because if we assume that it's a 50-50 split, which we could evaluate, it's just going to make people score worse. And if everybody who's on a horse is scoring worse, that's not necessarily bad for the people who are on foot, except that we're evaluating against Shagrat, which means if you're on foot, you're getting knocked over. So the people on horse would see a drop in their combat scores, and the people on foot would see a drop in their survivability scores, right? So, at a point, everyone's going to be losing. So would the places change very much? Maybe not. Now, I did just go back and look in my math, and there is one rejoinder I need to make on Gwai here. I had Gwai here evaluated at strength 6, and he should have been evaluated at strength 7. Right. When you boost him up to strength 7, he is in fact above Forlong. Forlong would drop a spot. Okay. Gwai here goes to spot number 16. Forlong gets pushed to 18. There's one guy who's in between them, who I'm sure we'll cover in a bit. It changed 4 spots, right?
Okay.
Point
I am
being,
satisfied again.
Both of these models against Defense 5 warriors are wounding on 3s. So they will chew through average troops and even high defense troops at about the same clip, because one is strength 5 with +1 to wound, and one of them is strength 7. Right? It's not until you get to that defense 10 that the difference in their strength actually matters. And if we evaluate it against lower defense troops, like defense 3 troops, you'd actually see Forlong doing better. Yep. So while Gwai here is certainly a good model to compare him to, he is almost twice as expensive, a good 50% more in price. Hero slaying, you're going to do better with Gwai here. Warrior slaying, you're going to do about the same. Right. So, it's kind of a toss-up.
Yeah. But the difference, I think, and you hit it on the head, is that it is one thing to sort of simulate. So if Forlong charges Shagrat and wins the fight, how likely is he to kill him? And the answer is, well, pretty likely. Like, as man-sized models go, like he's got about as good of a shot as most models do because he's wounded him on 4s, and he's going to get 6 dice to wound, and he's got the might behind it and all that stuff. And that it's basically the same as Gwahir would have. The difference is that if you go out of that sort of simulation thing and you're actually on the table, I think if you have Gwahir, you run him into Shagrat, and if you have Forlong, you keep him as far away from Shagrat as possible until Shagrat is out of might, or you run him in with a friend. And that's sort of where the difference is that Forlong is great, but like you said, his sweet spot is fight 4 and below troops. Of whatever defense, he really doesn't care. Like even the Vault Wardens, like he's got a decent go at a Vault Warden shield, right? 5s to wound. They're infantry models. He can knock them prone, right?
Yep.
So 5s to wound, 6 dice. Like he's gonna have as good a go as any hero is against troops like that, and that's what he likes. He likes running those guys down. Once you get to a fight 5 hero, especially a fight 5 hero who can strike, I think most of the time, because he's so valuable for other stuff, he's given your troops re-rolling 1s. He's got your Warhorn in your army. I think most of the time you probably don't run him as a hero slayer by himself against heroes that can strike, and that's the difference. And for me, that's sort of what kept him out of the tier that we're dealing with.
Let me push back on that for just a moment. I would agree that given the choice between charging into warriors, especially fight 4 and below warriors, and fight 5 heroes who can strike, I think in general you'd want him running over warriors instead, because I think it would be more reliable that you'd win. However, here's the deal. Let's assume that Forlong has the choice to charge a fight 5 hero who can strike. Okay, if that fight 5 hero now the fight 5 hero that he's charging is not getting a charge bonus, right? So he's going base attacks. In infantry or cavalry, he's got whatever his base attack stat is. And he can choose with his fight value to call a strike if he wants to. And if that hero is either strength 4 or strength 5, he's probably got 3 dice wounding on 5s, which means he's only going to do 1 wound against Forlong.
Well,
estimated,
well,
right? I mean,
okay.
Unless he has +1s to wound, or is willing to burn might, or whatever. But you got to choose.
Or he rolls hot, which happens.
Or he rolls hot, right? But you got to chew through 3 wounds and a fate point, right? And the beauty about not having strike on Forlong is that you don't have to call strike. You have potentially all 3 of your might points, unless you've spent some already. Calling heroic shoots for your Blackroot Vale archers, for example, because why not? But you might have all 3 of your might points to either boost your rolls or make that fate point automatically work. So even if you lose, you can drain resources out of that enemy hero, and that guy is simultaneously not charging into warriors, calling a combat, and clearing out 2 to 4 guys in this round. Instead, he will spend the round spending his might to blunt off of Forlong. Maybe he can even take Forlong down with him, but he may not, right? Now, I don't think you charge into Aragorn or Azog with this guy, right?
Right.
But against a fight 5 hero, I pick on Shagrat in my evaluation, but you could take guys like Darwine or any of the other guys that are about this level. Halbarad is at this level. You could charge into them and be reasonably certain that you're not going to die. So, if you stall them for 1 or 2 turns and maybe do damage to them in the meantime, during that time too, you could make the case that Forlong would be okay taking that chance because he's got the 3 wounds, because he's got the fate, and because he's got all that might to make it work. So, again, I do think it would be better if you're running over warriors, but I think there's a case for taking on heroes as well.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair, and I think that's right. Against a fight 5 mid-tier hero, he's gonna. I mean, that's what he is. He's a fight 5 mid-tier hero.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
under 100 points.
The thing that's surprising is that you have a fight 5 mid-tier hero in your top 20. That's where
Yes.
the
Yes.
And it's also worth noting because at the time that we recorded this, Jasmine Tetley had recently released a 27-page stats sheet on killing power for under 100-point models and stuff like that. And obviously, Forlong placed really, really well. And actually, just so did fiefdoms generally, because you get the Dol Amroth captain, you've got Angbor the Fearless, you've got Forlong the Fat. And it is worth noting that Angbor the Fearless could be completely fearless going into this. I'm sorry, that Forlong the Fat could be fearless with a banner and re-rolling ones to wound while he's in this fight. So I'm not going to knock Forlong. I just find it a little interesting he's placed as high as he is, considering that there's a lot of things that could change in the situation that would dramatically affect how well he does. So
and don't forget, if he hasn't moved, he can re-roll his failed shooting rolls.
That's right.
That's right.
That's
don't
right.
Sleep on, don't sleep on your hair.
I stand mistaken, I guess. There you go. But yeah, so it's just interesting. I
reference all the bubbles.
I guess because of where I tend to play and the kinds of armies I tend to play, I definitely agree that as a mid-range hero, he's one of the most beastly ones you get out there. I guess I look at a similarly costed model like a Cave Troll, for example, and I start thinking, top 20 Slayer? I don't know, man, because I'm seeing a pretty hard counter there.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we actually have a fair number of mounted Fight 5 heroes in this tier, Fight 5 and Fight 6. So Durnhelm is in this tier at 34, Faramir is in this tier at 33, Eladin and Elrahir are in this tier at 32. And then you've got
Firefight 6, of course.
Well, you've got the Iron Hills captains at Fight 5 who can't strike are at 39.
Who might not be able to strike, but they might.
Right, might not. They can't base. And then Legolas from Mirkwood. So basically, what is that? Seven of these 10 models, and then there's a tree in here, and Champion Gloin with his.
There's a dwarf in here too. Yeah, 2 dwarves
are in the list as well. But for the most part, these are Fight 5, Fight 6 in the Twins' case, and Legolas's case. Heroes. Some of them have strike, some of them don't. They can all be mounted, sort of, but all in that sort of 80 to 100-ish price range. And I think the how do we feel about sort of the sorting of this, of those heroes, I guess, is maybe my question.
So personally, I am a little surprised that Forlong is behind Theoden, which sounds funny because I ranked Forlong behind Theoden. But when you put it that way, it is a little strange. Yeah.
So I had Forlong killing more than Theoden. I think I'm the only one who had Theoden below Forlong in my rankings. So I don't know why you're surprised.
Yeah. So you are. Yeah, I'm not sure why.
I don't know why you guys did that.
But Forlong should be ahead of Theoden.
Theoden is one of those heroes who's going to tick off the boxes, though, because he has the 12-inch, radius bonus to riders. He's Fight 5, Strength 5 on the charge for most of the legions that he's in. Again, I can't remember if the Paths of the Druidin has it, and of course there's the infantry ones, which don't count. He's got 3 Might and Strike, though you don't really want him charging into heroes in my experience. I've had a bad experience with Mordor Troll Chieftains in the past. He's a pretty good hero, a good troop chomper, but not a great hero chomper. He can do it, but you don't really want him to.
Yeah. He's got some weaknesses for sure.
Yeah.
So I goofed, obviously. So, I mean, it doesn't count towards the rankings because I went ahead and ranked all the models that got scores on other people's lists. So I have Forlong at 61 and Theoden at 58. That is clearly a mistake.
Clearly.
I've got an errata that. So if I was re-ranking these mounted ones, I'd have Theoden at the back. He doesn't have a +1 to wound. Forlong does. I'd have
At
Forlong.
always strength 5 instead of strength 5 only on the charge.
I guess the argument for Theoden is he does have the strike, and so he can have a go at those bigger heroes and monsters. In reality, he doesn't unless you're really desperate. But I guess that'd be the argument for Theoden over Forlong.
So there's actually a couple of arguments here as our earliest Rohan player in the group, by the way. So first of all, obviously, yeah, like it was a little surprising to me looking at him because I'm like, he can get reroll ones to wound like Forlong, but that's only if he feints with Harrogrim. And like he can get a banner if there's a banner nearby, which is kind of the same as Forlong has, because that's the one that Forlong's not guaranteed to get if he's not close enough to Imrahil. And
which by the way, that's hard. It's very hard to not.
Yes, it is hard to get away from that 12-inch range. That is extremely hard to do.
Right. Carry on.
And it's like, and obviously he can be kind of like he's fearless in that if you have Erkenbrand in the army, you can get up to Courage 7, which at a point, Courage 7 and Auto Pass are basically the same thing. So, like in my head, my first thought was, well, yeah, is he exactly the same? And I think the reason why I ranked Theoden higher is because Theoden has a way to get might back, which means he can do more of the Theoden-y things, and he can call more heroic combats, and he can kill more stuff than Forlong can. It also means that he has a better chance of getting the charge that Forlong doesn't have, because you've got more ways to be able to call heroic moves, and you've got more ways to get people to come in and help you in your fight so that you have a chance to kill stuff. I think that's where my math ended up going on it, is that he had a better chance of getting the charge, so he actually got his strength 5 with all of the bonuses for being a cavalry model, which Forlong might have or he might not have. I think that's where it went. But as I'm looking at it now, it does seem a little odd that I put him higher, albeit, it's not like he was a whole lot higher, but
it was
still.
like 15 points higher.
From where I was at, that was not a whole lot higher. A lot of those models were kind of like, I feel like they're about here. The top 30 was the really competitive part.
Oh, goodness.
So, I mean, I've got these two at the bottom because they can't strike. Have the Iron Hills captains just above Forlong, probably just for the off chance that you can strike. Although, I mean, again, I don't want to slander fight, strength 5 with a war spear. Like, that's good. And the Iron Hills captains are not strength 5 with a war spear. That's, like we talked about last time, probably for game balance reasons.
But they are strength 4 with a war spear.
They are strength 4 with a war spear, which is pretty good.
Against
Shagrat. It's not the same against Shagrat, but it's against a lot of things. It's good.
Well, but against Shagrat, you just do 3 strength 6 hits when you run into him, knock him down, and then you attack him. So,
So you evaluated the captains on the chariot, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I could see that. I could see that upgrade. Now, you don't get the +1 to wound, but
you don't need it.
Strength 3 with some in the ways on from strikes are pretty good. And the crossbow. That's pretty good. Yeah. What about the others 3 that we haven't talked? The ones with strike. So you got Durnhelm, Faramir, and Elladan and Elrahir. And Legolas. So that's 4. We got 4.
So I'm going to talk about Faramir by talking about Forlong again. So I evaluated Faramir on a horse with a lance, which means he's not from the Legion, because the Rangers of Ithilien Legion, you can get the horse, but you can't get the lance. So this is straight up Minas Tirith Faramir from Minas Tirith, and the great thing about Faramir is that there are so many affordable and expensive heroes of valor and heroes of legend in Minas Tirith that it is unlikely that Faramir is going to be your army leader. And just like Forlong, this means that you can have a less than 100-point grenade to go throwing at the enemy. And, your opponent can spend resources to beat him. But, Faramir could be defense 7. If you don't give him a bow and you give him the shield and the heavy army, it could be defense 7 on a horse with a lance, fight 5, 3 might for either defense or strike, depending on how gutsy you want to be. If your opponent is, Azog or something, and you know that he's fight 7, fight 6 if he's got the flail, that he wants to use. You're just like, well, okay, I'll call a defense. And suddenly Azog is like, oh, well, I could also call defense, probably for free. Or, oh no, wait, that's all I can call, really, because if I call a strength, I'm still winning you on sixes. If I call a strike, I already have you beat on fight value. If I call you, I guess I'm calling a defense too. And you're like, great, wonderful. We'll both bounce off of each other this round. Everything will be fine, except that you're a 200 something point hero and I'm a less than 100 point hero, right? And if you don't call a defense and I win because you flub a roll or something or aren't willing to pay the money to make it work, then I get the +1 to wound. And it's crazy. And it's cheap, right? Forlong doesn't have that heroic defense call that he can call, unfortunately, but Faramir does, and I think it makes him a really good grenade hero because you can be reckless with him, and if you're running Dad in the army, which I always do, you kind of have to be reckless with him sometimes because, well, that's what he's going to want to do. So yeah, I actually think Faramir is one of the better heroes in the game. He ranked really well in mine. He was 24th on my list. And yeah, I mean, I think he deserves to be higher than he is, but it's kind of weird thinking of this fight 5 to attack hero being so good in the evaluation.
Yeah. So and this is probably I'm not 100% confident I got it right. I actually had Faramir the lowest out of these 4 in my rankings. I had him at 45th, so he's sort of at the end of my thing because the fight 5 is good, not great. The 2 attacks is good, not great. And when I'm and I grant you, the lance is really nice to have a lance. Defense 7 is really nice to have defense 7. Heroic defense is really good, very nice to have heroic defense. I had him a spot behind Durnhelm because I like 3 attacks. I like 4 attacks on the charge. And I had him behind the twins, who I had just ahead of Durnhelm, because they're fight 6 and they can strike with elven-made weapons. And I've got all of them a fair bit behind Legolas, because Legolas has fight 6 with Orcrist. So now he's got elven-made weapon plus daggers if you need them, plus he can do a +1 to wound, plus he's got the bow that he can shoot on top of his horse. So, I'm not 100% sure I got that right, but that's sort of how they came out in mine. I say that sort of recognizing Durnhelm has some limitations, especially if you don't got the Rohan army bonus and she's only strength 3. Mm-hmm. Strength 3 and even strength 4 is not the same as strength 5 for most of your heroes, and Faramir is basically strength 6 when he charges because of the lance. But I rated the 3 attacks because that's 8 dice to wound. I haven't done the math, but I don't know. Strength 4 with 8 dice and strength 6 with 6 dice.
Well, it depends on what you're wounding, right?
I think both of them are adequate.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If you're dealing with heroes, I'd rather have an extra die to win the fight, especially if you're charging a cavalry model and you're not getting in Faramir's going to be stuck with 2, Durnhelm's going to have 3. So that's sort of where I came out on that.
Yeah. I like Faramir as a Slayer. I put him at 41 on my list. For all of the reasons that you mentioned. And I do confess he did place a little higher than I expected him to. I actually expected him to fall a little lower, but that heroic defense does wonders for making sure he stays alive. He's also, because of that, one of the few characters, and this helped to buoy him over other choices. He's one of those characters who, if he gets dismounted, he's still okay. He's not great, but he's still okay because of that. What does kind of surprise me a bit, because I agree with basically everything that you guys said about Faramir, is why Faramir placed on you guys' lists and the Dol Amroth captain didn't. Because I'm going to walk you in about 30 seconds briefly through why Faramir is my 41 and the Knight of Dol Amroth captain is number 40. Okay. For Faramir, you have fight 5 For the Dol Amroth captain, you can get fight 6 because you should always be running him right there at the shoulder of Imrahil. That's what you do with this guy. Ideally, you get 2 of them and you just run them right at people, or maybe seed the other one to 4 long if you're a 4 long person. You've got the same strength 4 with a lance. You've got the same defense 7. You've got the same armored horse. You got the same number of attacks. The only difference is that one of them has 3 might points instead of 2 might points. Faramir's a little more resilient because of defense and that second fate point. And the other guy gets reroll 1s to wound, 12-inch banner radius, and potentially fearless. So my question is, why didn't this captain appear on anybody else's list if we love Faramir this much? That is my question.
Well, I have a very simple answer. I didn't have his lance bonus on there, and I didn't have his banner bonus on there, and I didn't have his fight value bonus on there. The fight value wouldn't matter because strength fight 6 is still going to be lower than fight 9. So there's that.
But it forces out a might point.
The banner would help. And now that I'm recomputing it, he did do pretty well and well enough to get at least into the honorable mentions. So you're absolutely right. But I was done looking at this thing. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Is I was done looking at this spreadsheet, looking for ways to make it better. Oh, and I didn't give him his bonus attack for being on the chart, so that would do it too. There we go. And now he does quite well. You're absolutely right. He's a good hero.
He's a good hero. He can't strike.
He can't strike.
I have like 8 models on my 50 that cannot strike. 2 of them are wizards who can kill things other ways. 2 of them are generic monsters, Ensign Great Eagles, who don't need the strike most of the time. Fight 7. One of them is an enormous siege bow that, look, if you get to it, you deserve to beat it. But it doesn't need strike to take on Boromir or Sauron or whoever else. I got the Iron Hills Chariot. Same reason. And I got Quick Beam. Now, the Dol Amroth captain is great. He's not, but I mean, my 50 was Dwalin the Dwarf from Thorin's company. I don't think he's better than Dwalin the Dwarf. So, good model, but fight 6. Dwalin the Dwarf is fight 6, and he can strike with 3 attacks instead of 2. And if he wants to be strength 7, he's strength 7. So, yeah, it was an exclusive club. That's my rationale.
For my part, Durnhelm was 32nd on my list. She got the same score as Kings of Men, High Elf Captains, Captains in Numenor, and now Captains of Dol Amroth. And all of those profiles got ranked this high because they are fight 5 to fight 6, strength 4, with a lance, on a horse, base 2 attacks. And I looked at these 5 models, 4 models, Kings of Men, High Elf Captains, Captains of Numenor, Captains of Dol Amroth, and I said, these things, they're really good heroes. They don't really belong. They need to be at the bottom, like just barely at the cusp of my list. So even though they rank in the mid-30s, I'm not going to put them in the mid-30s. Because if I do, like, really good heroes, right, like, remember, down in the 40s, I had Thrain down in the 40s, right? And Thrain would not have made my list. Yeah, I know. Thrain would not have made my list if any of these guys had made the list. And I'm like, these generic heroes, I give you a hat tip. You did well in this particular evaluation, but you do not deserve to be here. So, math be hung. I'm kicking you off the list. And so I eventually floated the High Elf Captain to slot number 50. Just because, but yeah, I mean, the Captains of Dol Amroth deserve to be about where Durnhelm is. I don't think there's a problem with them being about where Durnhelm is, and that happens to also be about where Faramir is. So, I think it's fair to bring them up, and I think it's fine to have them. But no, I'm not going to rank them high enough.
I'll confess, Centaur. I was surprised that you did not. I thought you were going to go into the twins when you start talking about the.
Oh, I plan to.
Yeah, yeah. Because I had a really, really hard time ranking them. They were probably they went back and forth. I think at one point when I was doing this list, I had them originally at number one because I mean they are not the best slayers in the game, but there's two of them, and if you put the two of them in close proximity, they will kill pretty much anything that costs their points or less without having to break much of a sweat because they are well equipped. I mean, they're on horses, they've got strike, they've got 6 might points between them. They, if you try to split them up, they tend to ping pong into each other's combats. If they ping pong into each other's combats, whatever they're fighting is probably dead. And they've fallen all the way to 40 something, 42, I think.
43 for you.
I've got them at 43, right? Just ahead of Durnhelm. And I got them behind Legolas. So I really struggled to figure out what to do with them. And I think we were talking about it before the break. I think part of the reason why I struggled was the way that their twin blades works. They if you could have everything that they can do at once, they'd be a fantastic profile. But because you can't use the twin blades rule on a horse, they're only going to be 2 attacks or 3 on the horse with the knockdown. You got to be on foot to get to 3 attacks. If you go with the 3 attacks on foot, you can't get the +1 to wound because you can't use your swords. I mean, you're using 2 swords, not 1 sword with 2 hands. And you don't get a +1 on a horse because you can't use the twin blades on the horse. So it's like I don't know what the best outlay is for them. I think it probably is having them on a horse, but I really struggled to figure out sort of where to put them.
So I'm actually the opposite. I didn't struggle at all on where to put them pretty much. I knew they were going to be roughly between about the 15 to 20 mark, and sure enough, they came in at 16 for me. I kind of see it the opposite way. The way that I think you should look at the twins is that primarily you should take them on the horse, you should take them with the armor, you should take them with the bows, and you should shoot at people on a horse. And then you charge when you feel like it. And then the advantage of the special rules involving your twin blades comes in if you ever get dismounted. The advantage of the twins is you can guarantee you get 3 dice pretty much all the time at fight 6 with an elven made weapon. You can even get yourself up to 4 if you ever get dismounted. You can increase your ability to wound when you're not knocking people over anymore. The advantage of the twins is they're reliable, they're stable. And for my account, that actually helped an awful lot because unlike a lot of other heroes that were really spiky based on if I mounted, did I charge or did I not, they're more or less always going to kill things about the same. So while yes, obviously the ideal would be 3 attacks, 4 on the charge with a horse, knock everybody down, 8 dice to wound at strength 4, or 2 dice, 3 dice to 3 dice on the charge, knock everybody down with +1 to wound. I don't know. I feel like it's actually better to be like, no, you're either going to get 6 dice to wound or you're going to get 2 to 3 dice to wound, and they're going to be really good still. And I feel like that might actually be a better way to look at them. It's just that they're consistent, they're durable. It doesn't really matter what your opponent changes about the scenario; they're still going to be roughly about the same, and they just got to weather it. That's the way that it works for your opponent. So that's my opinion.
So what, if you don't mind my asking, so you have them above, I mean, at 16, I imagine you would. You've got them above Legolas.
Yes.
What's the calculus for that?
So I'm glad you asked because I knew I was going to take a beating on that.
Well, no, I'm genuinely curious because again, I sort of, like I said, I had them up high and now they're below Legolas, but I'm not 100% sold at that. So I'm just I'm curious if your thinking is obviously different from mine because you've got them above Legolas and fairly high. But I'm just curious what you're looking at.
Yeah, so the big thing is that everything Legolas does, the twins do decently well, if not better. That's the biggest thing. So if we're saying that they're all mounted, because I think Legolas, this particular Legolas, especially if he's got Orc Wrist, I feel like the mount is the way to go. That's really what you want to do. And you want to shoot at people 3 times until you feel like closing, at which point you mow everything over. But when you think about it, the twins are getting 2 shots every turn, and Legolas is getting 3. Sometimes maybe 1, but most of the time you probably just want to take the 3. The 3 is good, and your plus goes up from that. And so I feel like, hey, twins will be pretty good there. They may even get reroll failed to hits depending on if you take them with the Rivendell Army bonus. So you've got some options there. And so I feel like on the whole, they're probably about as good as Legolas is in terms of shooting. If they start closing, you've got anywhere from 4 to 6 attacks, maybe 8 if you feel like shielding, versus Legolas's 2, maybe 3. You've got 6 might points between your 2 boys instead of 3. You could potentially even be in 2 places at once. One person goes after the banner, the other one goes after a normal person. You have so much more mobility and so much more versatility. And again, it's stable, right? Legolas is really hoping that he's on the charge all the time. He's really hoping that his 3 might points don't run out between trying to shoot at people and trying to call heroic strike. The twins, if one of them starts running out of might points, you just throw both of them into the same fight and the other one calls everything that needs to be called. So you have a lot more freedom and a lot more versatility. And I think over time, you do kill a whole lot more than Legolas does. And admittedly, yes, they are more expensive than Legolas is by a good bit. You could almost buy 2 Legolases for the same cost. But the difference is you can't buy 2 Legolases. And as a bit of background, I almost had the Knight of the White Tower on this list because of the fact that you can have more than one. He's not limited to just, here's my one dude doing my thing. So for me, as I looked at the twins, I'm like, hey, they got the high fight value. They got the elven-made weapons. They're already winning fights. The only question now is how many fights are they going to win, killing how many people on a turn? And I saw them killing a lot more people than Legolas. That's really why I have him higher.
So I had a 6-way tie in points between the following models, and the participants are going to make you laugh. Okay. I got a 4.0667 score for Treebeard.
Yeah, I'm already laughing.
Legolas, who we're talking about now.
Yes.
The King's Champion, who we are not talking about yet.
These are pretty good.
Halbrod, who we are talking about now, except we're not because Halbrod is boring.
Yeah.
Glowin the Dwarf Champion of Erebor, who we are also talking about now, but we're not talking about him because he's boring. And Eladan and Elrohir. They all scored about the same.
Okay, so 2 of those models do not belong.
No, Treebeard and the King's Champion, I assume?
No, Treebeard and Halberad.
Okay. Well,
Halberad's too low and Treebeard is too high. He's higher, but the other 4 is a good company.
Yeah, the rest are fine. So Halberad's, when you look at his offensive stats, he's actually about the same as the twins if they're all mounted. Because he's fight 5 with strike, they're fight 6 with strike. So, that may make a difference, but it may not.
Yeah.
They're strength 4. They're all base 2 attacks, 3 on the charge. So from an offensive point of view, they're actually the same. Right?
All right. I rescind my comment about how.
I put Halbrod slightly above Eladan and Elrohir because he also gets a banner. And so that means he's actually rolling 4 on the charge and 3 when charged, as opposed to their 3 and 2. And I didn't count that in. I actually forgot, I think, to include that in Halbrod's scoring metric. I don't think it would make that big of a difference. But, I mean, it will make a difference. So I put him slightly above. I put Glowin the Dwarf slightly above because I like the +1 to wound with no penalty, even though, you don't knock people over. You can be strength 5, with the +1 to wound. So that'll chomp through some pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
Treebeard, ironically, is one of those models that struggled in my list. We'll talk about him more later, but he doesn't knock stuff over. So, he can hurl warriors, get lots of kills that way. But, when fighting heroes, you can rend, you'll get about 2 wounds, which is about as much as some other guys, which is less than 4 long will get, if he knocks you over. So, I mean, it's just the sad truth of monsters in this case. But I mean,
So
as much as we're all laughing here about the differences between Legolas and Eladan and Elrohir, I'm actually thinking that the discussion is far more broad than that. Because
I
in
just want
my
to flag for future reference when we get to our evil podcast, specifically the top of the evils, where you talk about monsters who have trouble killing things because they can't knock things down and they have to rely on hurl. I just want to flag that was a knock for
That's gonna come up. Yeah.
that is. So
I,
we'll
I
just flag
also
that.
I also want to quickly flag that the statement that Treebeard cannot knock things over is not true, but we will talk about that when we get to Treebeard because he can knock things prone. And this goes back to consideration of 2 rounds of combat, not
Okay.
that
one.
is true.
Knock
That is
anything
true.
prone.
Yes. So I'm just saying, not by charging into it, but to say he cannot knock things prone is not true, and we will talk about that at length when we get to Treebeard.
No, that's fair. That's fair. So this again gets back to the point where, like, if you set up the scenario right, you could make things different. So, like, if you assume that you're running an Ent army, which you probably are if you're running Treebeard, and you hurl somebody into Treebeard's fight, right?
Yeah.
You will knock everybody that Treebeard's fighting over. But Treebeard himself will not be knocked over because his strength is high enough. So could you double Treebeard's dice and get a better score? Yes. Yes, you could. If I played that scenario, yes, you could. I didn't think of that scenario until just now.
Sure.
But, I mean, could he have ranked higher? Of course he could have. Right?
Yeah.
But
Well, and to be fair, right? So there is. I mean, yeah, everybody's sort of evaluating these things. I do think, yeah, at least when I looked at the exercise, I was pretty much looking at the models by themselves, what they have, because, like we talked about with Thror, like if you bring list building into it, you can get a whole lot of scenarios if you're ideal wish listing stuff. But he doesn't have monstrous charge. He doesn't have a horse. Treebeard doesn't. The twins do, and so he's gotta be like Thror. You gotta fight more unconventionally if you want to be doing double dice to all the models you're fighting. He can't do that just by walking into a fight and fighting.
That's true. For the record, I'll pull the veil back a little bit. I was referring to the bludgeon rule.
Right.
So in
that's
turn
one
1,
model.
he picks somebody up, he bangs every single person in the fight. He then, if the model survives, knocks them prone, and then in turn 2, he attacks them. So they're on the ground, he gets the double dice, so on and so forth. So, like, that's how I'm referring to it. So to answer the question, no, I'm not saying hurl people into the fight. I think that would probably go beyond the realm of what you're allowed to do. I agree mostly on the list building thing, although I would say that heroes do exist within a context. So, if one is to say, well, because one doesn't have a fill in the blank, therefore one cannot do that, I think that there's at least some room to say, well, that's not necessarily true. I don't want people to exist so much in a vacuum that when you see it on table, you end up with an actually very different experience, right? Yeah. About one's slaying
I think that's fair, but I also think it's fair to acknowledge that a model like Boromir or Gwaihir can knock things down.
Sure.
And immediately strike them. And Treebeard cannot. And so I think it's fair to give, Boromir and Gwaihir extra credit for getting those extra dice, which they can get on their own, and maybe not give Treebeard that same credit because he doesn't have that rule in his favor. Now, there's a whole argument to be made, and I'm sure when we get to, we're going to talk about the monsters, Gwaihir and Beorn and Treebeard in a bit. I mean, we've had this conversation before, right? About how do you measure these 3 monsters? Because, Gwaihir can knock things down and the other 2 can't, versus the bear hug, versus the bludgeon, versus all this other stuff. So, yeah. Oh, well, that was, we might as well. We've talked about every other model on the list. I mean, Quick Beam is on here. He's got the same caveat as the Treebeard stuff we've just been talking about, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I do want to say on here is I felt bad not being able to rank Quick Beam higher. He was only 46th on my list, which ironically did place him pretty close to Tiberius. So I guess I have a metric that placed him close to where Tiberius did. So that's great. Really, the only reason why he didn't place higher is because he doesn't have strike. That's really the reason why. Fight 7's good, but against most people in the game who have strike, you're going to be losing ties, and at that point, D8 is great, but it's not that great. So that's really the only reason why he placed that low.
Yeah.
I love this model though, and I really wish I could have placed him higher.
I had him at 24. I had the same reservation about the strike as you did, but he's a fight 7 monster who's defense 8 with 3 wounds. And as I was looking through the list of stuff, I mean, I basically, when I aired, I was looking at these models and I was like, so could this model take out Quick Beam? Could this model take out Quick Beam? And I got to about 24 and I was like, you know what? Now I'm getting to the models where I feel like they could take out Quick Beam. So I'm going to put him at 24. and one of the models I had who I thought could take out Quick Beam is Thrain, who I had just above Quick Beam at 23, who wraps up our top 31. You know, he's in the 31st spot here. I mean, apart from the fact that he can't take a horse, he's got base, and he's only strength 4. He's got about everything else you want. He's got the 3 attacks, 3 wounds, 3. He's got all the 3s, 2-handed. I mean, the Master Forged Hammer, no penalty. He's strength 6 basically all the time. I don't know any reason why you wouldn't. You want to bash, like this is your dude. Like you don't actually want to use him to bash the model that Thor is fighting, but like you're talking about models that can knock a cave troll down, like he can knock a cave troll over.
I am ashamed and embarrassed to say that Thrain was only 48. But again,
Yeah.
if you evaluate a situation where he could knock things over, yeah, his score would have skyrocketed for me. But he doesn't knock stuff over. He's not fast.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
that's 2 categories where you're tanked. So,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, and again, I've got just a handful of foot models. Can't take horses ahead of him. I did feel for me, and the mount thing is real. But I felt like if I've got a choice between, like, a Rohan fight 5 hero on a horse, and there are some that are coming up that we haven't talked about yet, or Thrain. I kind of like Thrain. I do. And if you don't, that's fine. But I kind of like Thrain in that spot because he's got the higher fight, and the defense 8 is just pesky enough that even if you're strength 5 on the charge, you're still going to need 6s to wound. He's got enough wound and fate points to survive being knocked over if you manage to beat him in a fight. So, yeah, again, and I think he could take out a tree easier than some of the other heroes can, because at least he wounds defense 8 on 5s.
Yeah. And he'll probably be around for a second or third go.
Right.
In
And
case
he's got
flubs the
defense
first
too,
one.
doesn't he?
He does. Yeah, he's got heroic defense too. So mostly so he can go toe to toe with Azog for thematic reasons.
Yeah, and he's dirt cheap. Like he's really, really cheap for what he. I mean, yeah, Thor is cheap too. Like both of them are cheap. Like they're not super duper cheap, but for 120 points, you're getting really good value. But if Thor is your army leader and Thrain is your beater, and you've got young Thorin as sort of your forget about me, I'm the third banana dude. Like he is a very overqualified third banana dude, and he probably is, and that's 340 points. 3 like really, really, really good, solid heroes. Pack them up with troops, or put another one of the young Dwalin or Grimhammer Captain or whatever in your 4th spot, and then you're good to go.